Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. You can find everything about me. You can scan the QR code or go to roycollin.com where you find all my podcasts as well as my podcast coaching. And if you want to do a podcast tour, if you're looking for a virtual assistant, go to va.world. My guest is a keynote speaker and smiles a lot too, because those watching on BitChute, YouTube and Rumble will say, nice, happy person, which we always like. He's the best-selling author, a podcaster, a jet pilot, an award-winning business executive. He was inducted into the Wellness History Foundation's Wireless Hall of Fame, awarded the prestigious Bill Carlson Lifetime Service Award from NATE, N-A-T-E, and recently named the Business ICON of Idaho. And I just saw from looking at your Facebook that you got the International Impact Books Awards for 2025. You were the winner of that, so congratulations on that as well.
Thank you.
He has founded, built, scaled, bought, and sold multiple businesses. He testified before the United States House of Representatives. He has been trained by F-15 fighter pilots and continues to fly an Eclipse 500 twin-engine jet. He's completed over 350 podcasts, 351 probably, I don't know, and authored 3 books from Idaho. Please welcome Jim Tracy, a.k.a. The Grampion, if I pronounced that right.
You did, Roy. Thank you very much. I hope you won't hold testifying before Congress against me.
Put your hand up, swear in the Bible.
I did, and I told the truth, which was part of the problem.
So I suppose, let's start off, the Grampion. Where did that come from?
You know, my grandson Wesley was playing a card game with me, and I beat him. And Wesley is a very competitive young man. He was probably 13 or 14 years old at the time, and he said, "You're not Grandpa. You're not champion." And I was like, "What? I can't lose that status." And then he kind of got that Wesley smirk, and he said, "You're the Grampion." And it stuck, and my grandkids started calling me that, and I was like, that's probably the best title anybody could have. So that's what stuck on the podcast, and that has really resonated with people.
And it's strange, actually, because one of my clients, I got him on 250 shows. He called me the PodFather, and I was like, "Oh, I like that." And then I created a podcast, the PodFather. So it's amazing how something like that can happen.
It's awesome. What a great handle, the PodFather. Now I'm going to think of you as nothing but the PodFather ever again.
So I suppose, since we're talking about the podcast, because you've got your own one, so you might just let the listeners know what it's about and when you got involved in it.
Yeah, well, I first started talking when our company grew to the size where I walked out in the shop and there was someone I didn't know. It was kind of revealing to me that I needed to actually communicate with our people better. So I started doing a live radio show we had 100 and so employees at the time. And so I did a live radio show with them, and they said, "Hey, you can't do live because people will ask you questions that you don't want to answer." I'm like, "I think that's unlikely." So we went live. And it was audio only. And on the first time I did it, somebody said, "Hey, Mr. Tracy, I was just wondering how much money you made." And I was like, "Oh boy." And so I said, "That's a great question. How much money do you make?" And he said, "Well, I don't want to say in front of everybody." I could, "Me neither. Next question." And so that moved into an industry-wide podcast that we did for a while. And that was the first time going not live, audio plus video. And as I approached retirement age, I really missed it. I really missed communicating with people and telling stories and impacting their lives in a significant way. So at the end of the day, it was because I missed it and because I thought there was still some gas left in the tank. So, and it turns out there is, and people are enjoying it. And so I'm really thrilled to be able to bring it. This last time we had the jet fighter, the Thunderbirds are the United States Air Force demonstration team, and their commander spent 2 hours on my podcast, and it was just amazing to hear the stories. So I'm thrilled about that, and I'm grateful because we get to go into people's houses, living rooms, cars, all that kind of stuff once every week, and tell stories that help them through and impact their lives. So
I suppose let's talk about your passion with flying. And I mean, obviously you could see your face light up when that's the beauty of podcasting. You can have anyone you want on, and it's like you can have fantastic conversations and people actually enjoy it then because they're,
Yeah. When I was 47 years old, I was back in South Dakota and I was with my dad, and a small plane flew overhead. And I said, "Hey, when's the last time you went up on a small plane, Dad?" And he's like, "Well, that was a lot of years ago with your grandpa." And we looked over all the farms that we worked at and all the different places that we hunted ducks and all the crazy stuff we did and all the places that we had a fond memory of. And he said, "I'd give anything to do that again." Well, that was in April. In September, I came back with a pilot's license and took him on a flight, and that kind of kicked off. And coincidentally, that story and a bunch of other stories are in a chapter called Inspiration that is in the book that you talked about, the Building Men book. And but then flying served our business really well, and so I continued to fly. And then I was between Boise, Idaho, and Bozeman, Montana, and I was over the River of No Return wilderness area. And River of No Return is a pretty imposing name. And then when you're in a single engine aircraft, you look down, you think, if I lose my engine, it's going to be true. There is no return from here. And so I got home, I told my wife that story, and she said the words that every pilot longs to hear. "Yeah, honey, I think you need a twin engine." And so that's when we started moving into safer and more capable aircraft. So, but yeah, it's for a lot of people, flying is a passion. For me, I have a passion for what it does for me and the people around me. So, that makes it fun too.
no, absolutely. And I I was thinking of doing the gliding there years ago. And what I heard is that when you can do the gliding, that if something goes wrong, that with that skill set that you're able, if the engine does, because it does happen, unfortunately, is that something, is that true? And have you actually done gliding?
I have not done gliding, but if you do have an engine out, the glide ratio, especially I fly at 41,000 feet. So the glide ratio, there's not many airports that I can't get to if I do lose an engine. And if I lose one, it's no big deal because I have two now. So
So you mentioned about, having 100 odd employees. So you might just kind of go through the different companies because, you're kind of, I suppose, let's call you a serial entrepreneur with the podcast, with everything that you're doing. But your business side, you might kind of run through that.
I went through careers, including a corporate career where I covered the Pacific Rim and did international business in a manufacturing of engineered wood products. And it was a wonderful career. And as a matter of fact, when I was in my late 30s, early 40s, I was actually in my 30s. I was traveling that week and I went from Seattle to Phoenix to Salt Lake to Denver to Washington, D.C. And I was headed back over the city of Chicago to head to San Francisco to take the hop to Narita in Tokyo. And I looked at my watch, and I mean, I was a 35-year-old something flying first class. I was living a pretty good life. And I looked at my watch and I thought, I'm missing my daughter's swimming. I quit. And later that year, I walked in and resigned, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to do anything to keep you." But as it turned out, my son was getting into tower business, and I went out to his job site and found out that it wasn't as safe as I would like. And I did towers when I was a kid, which was probably why it was so romantic for him. But I went out there to his job site, and that night at dinner, I started kind of hammering him a little bit and saying, you know, this is not a good place for you to work. And he said, one night he finally said, "Hey, if you're so smart, let's do it ourselves." And that was the beginning and the birth of Legacy Telecommunications.
And
Excuse me.
so, I mean, like they're massive because, I mean, people don't realize it till you've got somebody up there looking down. So what height do most of these towers kind of go?
Yeah, most of them are 150 feet off the ground, but we've done towers in excess of 700 feet tall, where we climbed them, and we built them as high as I think 370 feet. But the process of putting those up is kind of the glamour part of it, but the maintenance part of it is where the operational expenses actually help you build a company with a little bit different revenue look. So the recurring revenue comes from maintenance, even though the construction projects are great. The technology, switching out technology, is what kind of pays the bills.
And like, what kind of mindset? Because a lot of people, no matter, you could give them $1,000,000, they wouldn't do that. You have to have no fear of heights, and it's just, you just say, yeah, it's not. Or can a person actually overcome some sort of fear? Have you ever, with employees and stuff like that, you either you're not afraid or you're afraid, or how does it work?
I think that it's really important that you overcome that fear with an intellectual wisdom. When we put the proper equipment in place, you can fall about 12 inches. And so that is in place on most towers in the States. And I think that when you rationalize that you're not going to fall, and you add in the processes that we put in place so you don't, it's certainly possible to overcome it. Now, some people never do. I don't like heights. Oddly enough, I was the chairman of the National Association of Tower Erectors, and I hated being on towers. However, when you climb, you come to the realization very quickly that, hey, I'm tied off. I'm not going to go anywhere. And then after you're up there a while, it becomes more comfortable. I actually didn't like hiring people who weren't afraid of heights, because they tend to be a bit careless. So I think if you're not afraid of heights, you're a little bit crazy.
It's the same as like public speaking, isn't it? I mean, you're an international speaker, and did you ever have a fear of speaking, or was it always?
It was, one of my best keynotes, one of the keynotes that people like, is called Embrace Fear. And when I start that keynote, I tell a story about a young boy who stuttered and had difficulties with math, and his confidence was very low. And then I hold up a mirror and I say, it was me. And I got over stuttering by my mom actually adding confidence, and then my dad kind of forcing me into a public speaking role in a contest. And he said, hey, you just have to learn how to tell stories. And it had enough teeth to it where I actually won the contest at our state level and went to nationals. And boy, that kind of changed everything. But I didn't really like being on stage still until I was in an industry association where I got to share with my peers. And that, even though it's incredibly nervous when you're standing up in front of, a couple of thousand of your peers, that's a pretty tough audience. But it was gratifying because we were able to give them a message that impacted them.
And just curious, when you're in the States, do you fly there yourself, or do you fly commercial?
Most of the time, if it's west of the Mississippi River in the western half of the U.S., I will fly myself. In the wintertime sometimes, or if there's a storm season, I never take a chance. I'm always to my speaking gigs a day early. And one of the things, when you get a little older, you get an opportunity to look at what things could happen that could prevent you from being there. And we just don't allow that. One of the things that, when I first got into this, I had a bureau call me, and they said, hey, we just had a speaker cancel, and it's at this little burg in Montana, and we don't have anybody that can be there. So we're wondering if you could be there. And I said, 2 hours. and that made all the difference. And I've been friends with them ever since. So in the western half of the U.S., I'll a lot of times fly myself, but I always make sure that it works best for the client. That's the most important thing.
And with the, like, I think it's called the e-speakers, the form that you have for that people use.
Yeah.
How relevant is that? Because like not everybody uses that. Because I mean, I've had a lot of speakers on the show, and
Yeah.
I've seen maybe 10 that actually have that, but it looks very good. And like, have you felt that serves you?
E-speakers has been another way. When you do marketing of your speaking services, it's really important that you have something behind you. That's just one of the things behind you. But the real test of whether someone is a speaker is if they get on the phone with you and they engage you and they know something about your industry or something about if you look at the people that I talk to, most of them, their deliverable is services, they're business service companies. And so when we talk to them, it's a pretty natural thing for me to speak their language. I do a lot with the Associated General Contractors. I talk to general contractors because I was one. I understand their pain points. I understand the protocols that they went through, and I grew a business is like the business they're trying to grow. And so when that happens, it's kind of magical, because when you speak the language of the people that are in the audience and then tell stories that resonate with them, then they come into your world as you're coming into theirs, and it really impacts them. It's part of the wonderful part about being a keynote speaker.
Excellent. So the House of Representatives, I have to ask, I mean, I'm curious.
Okay. So when I was chairman of the board of their National Trade Association, the House Energy House Energy and Commerce Committee, or whatever it's called, they they needed someone to come in and tell them if it was going to be possible to put all the television stations on digital frequency by the time it was required by the FCC. Do we have enough time? Do we have enough money? And and so I got to speak to something that I knew pretty intimately in terms of communication towers. And so I got to go into the swamp, but I did not drain it.
Oh, right. The book then, that Building Men.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you might let listeners know what exactly you're covering it.
Wow. Building Men is the subtitle is Character Lessons from Influencers. And Building Men is a collection of stories about people who invested in me when I was a young man, when I was a middle businessman, and when I was an older man. And I kind of moves chronologically a bit through my life and tells stories that that really are a tip of the cap and a credit to the people who chose to spend their time investing in what I say is kind of a knucklehead, because I had all of the earmarks of someone who would not be successful, and by the power of their investment in me and having a good woman alongside me, it was incredible to write those stories and just show that there are 20 characteristics that I have found were influencing to me, that were imparted to me by other people. And so I take those character points and I lay them out in a chapter by chapter format. When I talk about inspiration, talk about pilots. When I talk about the commander, I talk about my dad. And there's a lot of different stories in there of people who are in essence, it's a roundabout life thank you. And I thought that it would be just a little bit too memoir-ish, but what I found is that it became the number one release on Amazon and in Barnes and Noble in single parenting. And what I found is that even though the name of the book is Building Men, 80% of the people that are buying it are women, and they're doing so maybe as a gift or maybe as a training methodology for their own children. I don't know. I'm stunned that it has done so well. And as you said, it just won the International Impact Award, which I was like, my publisher is Morgan James out of New York, and they have been so phenomenal. They think it's so good. They just keep putting it in these book contests. I didn't know there were book contests, but there are book contests, and I'm certain it's not going to win a Pulitzer Prize, but it has won some awards, and I'm incredibly proud of the work, because it does the best to, number one, stay positive, number two, stay thank you, but most importantly, it is designed to help people by showing them what character traits are important to teach to young men through my eyes. And so, again, it's really about impacting people.
No, excellent. I mean, that seems to be the theme, with your speaking as well, that you're, helping others,
Yeah.
making the world a better place. What I love with like speakers that have the ability of getting is volunteers, when and there's a few things that I say. You were president, founder, board member of the Tower Industry Family Support Charity Foundation or Charitable Foundation, and another one, the West Regional. There. So you may just tell me about the different charities that you've been involved in.
Well, number one, anybody in business who's had any degree of success has an obligation to give back to the industry that they participated in that gave them virtually everything they have. And my opportunity came early with what we call the Tower Family Foundation. And you can find that towerfamilyfoundation.org. And we care for the families of fallen or seriously injured tower workers. And what we found out is there was this gap of time between when somebody got hurt or if there was a fatality involved, there was a gap of time where the system had a lag time in taking care of those families. So we said, hey, we can solve that. And so within 7 days of an accident, we cut a check to that family. And then we don't, disclose their name or anything like that because we don't want people to go, asking this family who's grieving and especially they're at their most vulnerable time that they'll probably ever experience. And the Tower Family Foundation has served those families quietly. And we've given away, I think, over a couple of $1 million now to families who've been deeply impacted by someone getting hurt on a job site that serves your cell phone and my cell phone and communication towers that are public safety related and microwave towers and TV and radio stations. All of communication in our world is serviced by towers. These tower workers had no one to take care of them in that small gap of time. And now we've expanded it. We gave away 42 scholarships, I think, this year. And then we renewed 15 scholarships for people who are classically coming from a blue collar family or even need scholarships where dad's not there anymore and where we can step in and help pay for college or a trade school to come alongside, families again. And so that has been one of the most gratifying. Also, there's the National Wireless Safety Alliances, which I also founded, and the NWSA established opportunity for our workers in our industry to get credentials with professional credentials that allow them to say, hey, I earned this the hard way and I took a test and then I took, in some cases, a practical examination to show that I can do this work. And what we found is that the dignity of the worker was of primary importance. So we saluted them by saying, hey, there's a credential you can get for your trade. And so if you're an electrician, you get an electrician card. You're a plumber, you get a plumber card. Well, if you're a tower technician, we're going to take care of you there too.
And because, with the insurance, if there's insurance, I mean, I've seen insurance, they'll take your money constantly, but as far as paying out, is that something that you kind of help them with or take over with insurance claims?
Yeah, we don't really do that. What we do is we get them money fast. That's our role in this thing because the insurance company is going to work it out. We're not an insurance company. You don't want to play one. We don't want all the paperwork involved. So we get an application with 7 days. We write them a check. And I think now in the case of a fatality, it's for like $19,000. And it's every year for 3 years so that they don't get tax implications. And so we do have a dramatic impact on them. We don't make it any better. If you lose a dad or if you have a serious injury with a mom that comes from an accident on a tower, we can't make that any better, but we can make it suck a little bit less. So, I mean, that's a pretty rude way to put it, but we are impacting families of the people who spend time doing what we do.
Excellent. And I hear, I'm not sure which one, but it's like, is it 97% of what's raised that you give out? Is that correct?
97 cents on the dollar. Yeah. That we had an account look at it.
And that is incredible because I exposed it on my other podcast Some give 1%. Some give 3%, like the Clinton Foundation, 3%. This all adds.
Yeah.
So when I heard 97, because I mean, I'd even accept 10, 15%, because I say, but 3% is incredible. So to give 97 is amazing.
Well, we've done it all with fantastic volunteers. And as I look, I mean, when I founded this foundation, I made a commitment. I said, we're never going to own a chair and we're never going to hire a butt to sit in it. And so at the end of the day, when you don't have staff and you've got these incredible volunteers that are pulling their weight, it's really wonderful. Now we spend a little bit of money on accounting so that we can prove to people that we do what we say we're going to do. We spend a lot of money with Federal Express because if we get the money fast and it gets lost in the post, it doesn't help a lot. So we Federal Express those checks out to them. And then we also, and this is a lost art. As the president of the foundation, I write a card to everybody who receives a check to make sure that they know that this is coming from people in their industry and that we care and that we're going to pray for them and we're going to if they need anything else, then they know how to contact us. And it's an incredibly gratifying. It's hard to read the stories sometimes, but it's incredibly gratifying. Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. I love seeing things like that. And with the business, then you said with your son, did you get any other family members in it, or even the grandkids? I don't know what's the eldest grandkid, but is there any that have got involved in the business?
Yeah, we've had a couple of grandsons work for us. We sold the business in 2018, and we have continued to build towers with another enterprise that we have that is where we actually own the towers. But we've got I've had my daughter has worked there, my son has worked there. I had another son that worked there. I've had a couple of grandkids that work there. It's kind of get one of those things that gets in your blood, and you kind of can't get out of it a little bit. But my focus of late has been on writing and speaking because I can have a greater impact. I now have 16 grandchildren. 2 of them are on the way to be born in September, twin girls. And so that's where another place where Grampion status comes from. If you can match that, you're a Grampion. But I thought, man, I'm 66 years old. And so if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I need to write and I need to get this podcast out and I need to speak on stages where it's recorded so they can get to know me because I might not be around. And that has been a wonderful thing. And then come alongside them, I think that it's really critical for us to live big, audacious lives. Because everybody's like, hey, Jim, like you're now past retirement age. Shouldn't you be slowing down? Well, I just finished a terrain race where I ran a 5K through the mud, and I ran it with 5 grandchildren and a son-in-law, and it was awesome, man. Now I didn't come in first place, so I'm not that much.
You left that to the book. That was for the book. You said you were already at first place for that.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, I think that when they saw Grandpa running alongside them, they thought, wow, if he can do it, I could do it. And let's inspire confidence, because if we're going to stand on a golf course or sit on a rocking chair on a porch and commiserate, it's not nearly as much fun as running a race with your grandkids or you brought up another charity called Pilots for Christ. And what we do is provide flights at no cost to people who, again, are incredibly vulnerable. And, if they've got health concerns and they can't fly private, or, we come alongside some organizations. I just talked about a flight with someone and they have a victim of human trafficking. And what we do is we pick them up and fly them sometimes across the country. And people ask me like, well, why do they need a free flight? Well, the first thing a trafficker does is take their identification. So they can't get on an airplane and they can't get away. And what we do is we fly them, sometimes even with law enforcement in our planes, and we get them free of those situations. Sometimes we even fly them back to testify against the bad guys. So, you're never young enough, you're never old enough to quit. And so let's live those big, audacious lives.
That's another fantastic charity. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very impressive. No, brilliant.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned at the start, the different awards and stuff like that. But I just kind of, I mean, Bill Carlson Lifetime Service Award. Right? You might just tell me about the different ones.
Okay, that is, they call it a Lifetime Service Award. It's for that association that I told you about, the Tower Association. And it's named after a man who was the grandfather of the association. And he took a really bad story and he turned it into something good for our industry. And that's making it safer and saving lives and impacting people. And so it's the Bill Carlson Award. It's not the Jim Tracy Award. They gave it to me, but I view that much like the Wireless Hall of Fame. Those are team awards, man. They might come with my name on them, but I had a whole team of people behind me at Legacy Telecommunications that actually did the work and allowed me to help people and to come alongside people with the trade associations and do these nonprofit things. If they weren't supporting me, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So these are their individual awards by their title, but in fact, they're team awards. And so I'm grateful to the team that was behind me who helped us to help impact other people.
No, excellent. And you were mentioning Cheques earlier. Is America the only country using Cheques still? I remember it was about 20 years ago. Last time I used one of them in Ireland, I don't use them in Poland. So it's a shop that's still using checkbooks.
One of the things that we found is that when we send people money, it's incredibly difficult. If something really bad and traumatic happens to you as a family, the last thing that someone should do is call them and ask for their bank account number. So we said, hey, we're going to send them a check to their home address with a note in it via Federal Express that we can track to make sure that we know that they get it and that there's no chicanery going on, because there's lots of bad people out there who will take advantage of someone who got a check, and we don't allow that. So it's a protection mechanism, and it's also sometimes they don't know it's coming. And so it surprises them. And then they go, hey, I don't know who you are. That's why we include the contact information. And, if their lawyer wants to call us or their boss wants to call us, we try and team up with the employer so that it doesn't surprise them. But it's, again, there's so much happening in their lives at that point. It makes it incredibly difficult. So we'll just send them a check.
I mean, it must be incredible for a family, especially if there's a loss and then they're worried about how they're going to survive over the coming months. And just something like that just changes everything for them. So it gives a bit of light in a dark time.
It is, and some of the things that people don't think about is that they might need money for rent or a house payment or gasoline or travel expenses. Because sometimes, if dad got hurt far away from home, well, mom's got to get on an airplane or get in a car and go drive to see him, and then she can't go to work, or she needs a babysitter, or there's any huge amount of things that we can step in and take care of, or maybe the employer went out of business because of something bad happened, and they got hurt right as that happened, and we've had that happen before. So at the end of the day, if you just do the right thing and be generous with your judgment, we've never had a bad one yet. So let's put it that way.
No, excellent. And just finally, you have a blog. You've been blogging for a while. Has the blog kind of made you get into writing, and what have you found kind of comments and interactions from your blog?
Yeah, I put the blog up. I love to take pictures, and I walk every day. So I love to take pictures on my walk, and so I found myself thinking, as you're walking, I'm thinking about stories that would go with those pictures. And that kind of just was a natural extension. I don't think I sleep as much as other people. And so I have a lot of time that is away from a crowded conversation. And so when my mind gets spun up, I sit down and I'll write a blog, which reminds me, I owe the people on the Grampion site a blog. So I'll have to get that going. But, part of that has been absorbed by YouTube because I love talking to people, and to be able to chat with people online as though they're sitting in your living room. The blog has fed the podcast has fed the blog, and all of those above, and the book, and all of those have have sped up the speaking career. So that's it's been I'm living my best life at 66 years old, and when I get on stage, it's awesome. But the best part is when I get off stage and I get to talk to people, and I get people that approach me and they say things like, when you told that story, it reminded me of the time when this happened. And I have literally had people weeping in my arms at the bottom of a stage saying, man, you gave me the courage to go on. One of the talks that I give is embrace uncertainty. The only thing that's certain in this world is that something's going to change. And it might not be today, but it's certainly going to be tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. And so if you know change is coming, don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Wrap your arms around it, and then let's crank some opportunity out of it. And people are like, well, what do you mean? I mean, how can you know that change is coming? Well, I was on a wonderful ski trip just after Christmas in 2018. And I took a pretty serious fall with my grandson Augustus on the ski slopes. And this lady came up behind me, and they put skis above my head in an X, and they went around in front of me. They said, Mister, can we do anything to help you? And I said, if you could make my leg face the right direction, that would be wonderful. Well, as it turned out, I crushed my tibial plateau. And a number of hours later, I was in the hospital in Spokane, Washington, and the doctors, I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm like, hey, the swelling's going to go down. You're going to set the leg. You're going to put a cast on. Everything's going to be wonderful. And he looked at me. He said, Mr. Tracy, if we don't operate in the next hour, you're going to lose your leg. Wow. Perspective. And then he said, I'm pretty sure that even if we can save it, you're never going to run again, which I was like, oh, that's awesome. I was never a runner. And then he said, you'll probably never walk right again. Well, they did save my leg. But for 90 days, I couldn't put any weight on it. And at the end of 90 days, I thought, you know what? They said I'm never going to walk right. I'm going to work hard enough at this. And I have a ski scar that goes from above my E to my ankle, where they actually took all of the muscle from my calf and then took all this film off it and then put it back in and sewed it back up. And at the end of the day, I was able to walk again. And I thought, well, if I can walk, I can run. And I started to run on an elliptical trainer. And I thought, this is going well. I can't run long distances and I can't do a big pavement pounder, but I just completed my 5th 5K with my grandkids. And if I can do that, and if I can do it with a smile on my face, I don't have a lot of nerve function in my leg, but guess what? I'm living my best audacious life right now. And you know what? You can too. You can too. Yeah.
Love it. And just, there was 20 lads. We went from Ireland to Italy on a skiing trip, and we arrived kind of late in the day, so missed the skiing, but went on a complete bender. And the hotel was just at the end. The hotel was at the end of the slope. We ripped off this red barrier and we went up, and then I said, let's go to the next one. I made a running jump, and there was about 6 of us on it. One of my friends said it was like a bullet. It went so fast. Everybody fell off it except for me. And I ended up crashing through it was a crash barrier where we had ripped off the crash barrier, and I hit a quad bike. And they got an ambulance. They brought me to the hospital, and I remember lying in the bed, and I looked and I saw a wheelchair, and I said, I'm all right. I didn't break my back or anything like that. And it was strange but I wasn't depressed because I was going to miss out on the skiing. And they
Yeah.
put it in plaster bars. I got it after 4 days. I told them take it off, and I took painkillers. I got 2 days is the skiing. But I think it's like you can, like you could have as well. Everyone can create the poor me story, or look at this, and you just go down that, and then everyone is asked, you know, how's the everything is perspective. So I love that story that you shared.
You know, towards the end of that time when I couldn't stand up, I was sharing a stage with Marcus Luttrell, and Marcus Luttrell is the guy who they went through the lone survivor. And so I had to get up after this Navy SEAL who was shot so many times and so many broken bones, bit his tongue in half, tore his knee up, and dislocated this. And so, and they put a ramp for me to get on stage, like a little elevator with my scooter. So I'm riding in this sit-down scooter, and I'm following this American hero. And I take my scooter up to the front of the stage, and I look down, and my wife is in the front row. And she looked up at me, and she mouthed those words. She knew what I was going to do. She said, "Don't you dare." And at that time, I grabbed the handle of the scooter and I grabbed the podium and I stood up and I told the crowd, if you think that I'm not going to stand for an American hero, you'd be really wrong. Let's give him another round of applause. And the place just kind of went crazy. But that was the first time I stood in I think 88 days or some crazy number. and I didn't put a lot of weight on my leg, but I did stand up, and I don't regret it for a minute, because it impacted the audience. And if that's the theme that I want to have when I graduate from life to go to heaven, I want them to say, man, I'm going to miss him because he impacted me. I'm going to be grateful for him because of the life he lived that allowed me to be better, to be stronger, to be faster, to be more resilient, to have more faith. Whatever it is, if I can help people, that's my job. That's my role on stage.
And like you mentioned about, you know, the podcast and everything for the grandchildren, that they'll kind of learn more. I'd love to see more people interviewing grandparents and things, because it's like, even now, I'm trying to find out about, you know, past generations, great grandfathers.
Mm-hmm.
It would be lovely to have that recorded. And I've heard of even people that they're able to do like a QR code on a tombstone and everything. But it'd be better if more people started interviewing people, just having a conversation and having it there from, because they tell brilliant stories, but then it's just gone. People aren't writing it down. They're just kind of pass on, and most people are forgetting. And I'd love if more people started doing that.
Well, you know, that's the beauty of the Grampion podcast too, because it's on YouTube, and as far as I know, it's not going anywhere very soon. So it will live above and beyond my time. And we have the opportunity, because this new media that we have, where we can speak directly into people's lives and that directly into people's homes, is amazing. And I get comments on the YouTube channel all the time that, like, hey, you inspired me because of this, or your guest. When you talk about guests, I bring people on the podcast who come in because they're a champion at one thing or another. And so the Grampion podcast is Grandpa, that's me, chats with champions. And whatever you do, their aviation, business, sports, politics, all of them have accomplished some huge thing. But it's not about that dopamine Super Bowl winning moment. Usually it's about the team, or it's about the grind that it took to get there. I just interviewed a guy who has climbed the 7 tallest mountains on 7 continents. And he's 65 years old. And now, this last year, he walked to the South Pole. From the water to the South Pole. Here he actually cross-country skied, pulling his sled and all the stuff that he needed to get to South Pole. And this next year, he's going to the North Pole. And that's open water and polar bears. And I mean, and you look at that and you're like, well, I was like, Gary, you're going to be 67 years old when you walk to the North Pole. What are you thinking? And every time he stays in a little tent at night, he writes some notes to his grandchildren, and he's going to publish those in a book. And it started up on Mount Everest, and then Mount McKinley and Kilimanjaro and all the 7 continents and now the South Pole and the North Pole. And he's going to have a way where he communicates with his descendants through a medium that says that the dude is incredibly accomplished, but his purpose is to be able to inspire and speak to them, impact them.
Is that when he was holding up the different fingers and the fingers meant the amount of mountains that he did?
Yep. 7. Yeah. And then when he went to the South Pole, he was just on my podcast for the second time, by the way. When he went to the South Pole, he put on a Grampion t-shirt while he was holding an American flag, standing next to the mirrored ball at the South Pole. It was pretty incredible.
Excellent. Listen.
So he's a loyal man too. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Brilliant. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed it, but I love what you're doing. I love the impact, not only with the book, but the charities, because I mean, I work in construction. I know what it's like, and I've seen, unfortunately things happen. And it's brilliant that what you're doing and the amount that you're actually giving, and hopefully it'll inspire others to do, because I think it's a great idea that you kind of go to the industry that actually fed you and that it's giving back. And I think that's a brilliant, if everybody done that, it's going to have a massive impact in the world. So you might let the listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah. So number one, if you go to the Jim Tracy, it's the Jim Tracy, TRACY.com, thegrampion.com, or YouTube, The Grampion, all of those places to find me. But the folks were, if you wanted to give to a great charity, the towerfamilyfoundation.org is also a great charity to give to. But if you want to get a little peek inside my life, go on Barnes & Noble or anywhere you buy books and get Building Men, Character Lessons from Influencers. And what I'll tell you, even the Audible version of it, I've been shocked. The Audible version of it, everybody asked me, "Hey, did you read your book, Jim? Because you've got this gravelly, super masculine voice." And I'm like, I know I auditioned for it, but they selected someone else. And so Tim Dixon from Vancouver Island, British Columbia, is the professional Audible narrator on the book Building Men. And so if you listen on Audible, you're going to get a treat with the book, but you're going to get a double treat because the narrator is such a powerful voice. I'm like, I really wanted to narrate that myself. And then I realized that he was way better at it than I was going to be. So, there's a lot of ways to find me. I'm all over LinkedIn. That's where most of the businesses that I deal with, on a regular basis, find me. A lot of the associations. I'm really excited. I've got plans to go warm places again for, this January and February, and most of them have speaking engagements. So we're starting to book into next year. And so I'm pretty thrilled.
Yeah, excellent. I'll make sure I'll put all the links as well as the book and everything, both on the audio and the video. Thank you very much.
Right on. Thank you. Blessed beyond anything I deserve.
No, fantastic. So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. You scan the QR code to find all my other 6 podcasts, and go to roycollin.com. If you're looking for a virtual assistant, go to va.world. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, and share with your friend. And when you check out Jim's podcast, do the same. It really helps. And if you get the book, make sure you give her a review. And I mean, we know from his positive smile and energy, it's going to be something worth doing. Until next week, take care.